welcome everybody to Retire Well, the podcast where we explore how to plan, invest and live well in retirement. And I'm Jim Smith.
And I'm Martin Fox. Together we'll be exploring how to make your money work for you, as well as how to live a healthy and purposeful life from midlife and beyond.
So coming up today, we'll be having an interview with Tom Hartmann from the Retirement Commission.
We'll be discussing investing, how to choose the right KiwiSaver fund, and ways to think about spending your money in retirement.
Now, KiwiSaver is one of these things that, we know we need to pay attention to, but it sort of sits somewhere between I've set it up and I'll get to it later.
Yeah, it's a bit like, updating your will or going to the dentist.
Yes, yeah, both equally important, but perhaps KiwiSaver is a little bit less painful in the short term. But the good thing about KiwiSaver is that it's actually doing a lot in the background.
Yes, it is one of those financial decisions where doing something can add quite a lot of value over time. You take into effect contributions, compounding interest. It's not really that exciting, but it can be very useful.
That's right. Yeah, it's really important to get the big decision right, like, say, joining, but also small decisions can also contribute a lot. So things like, what is your fund selection, what fees you're paying, and what contribution rates you're actually paying into it can make a big difference over 10, 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. And then we move on to that next challenge that people don't always think about, and that is, how do you actually use your wealth in retirement?
Yeah, we spend so long thinking about how to grow and build your wealth and very little time thinking and planning out how we're going to use this fund to support ourselves when we get to retirement.
Which is slightly ironic, really, and can lead people to being overcautious.
Yeah, or enjoying the early retirement too enthusiastically.
Yes, and then they'll have a quiet second half, won't they? And then layered on top of that, we've got the human behaviour aspect, where people aren't great long-term thinkers.
No, this idea of a future us can feel a bit alien, but we need to think about future us when we're making sort of decisions today.
Yeah, well, I hope the future us is grateful.
Yeah, me too.
So I think today's conversation is really important. It's not just about KiwiSaver, it's about helping us make better decisions with all our investments and the better tools that we can use along the way.
Exactly. So here's our interview with Tom Hartmann. So on today's podcast, delighted to be joined by Tom Hartmann. Tom is from the Retirement Commission and is the personal finance lead and responsible for such resources as the sorted calculators and the KiwiSaver fund comparison. Tom, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Hey, great to be with you, retirement guys. Very cool.
Thanks, Tom. So you've had a fairly sort of unique journey, firstly from journalism and then through to sort of financial capability. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and what drew you to the Retirement Commission?
Yeah, so just the first thing that comes to mind with the journalism is landing messages, right? And getting messages out to the general public. But then a key part of my career has been working in the mortgage industry in the States. And so when you put those two things together, basically you get sorted. And so that brought me to the Retirement Commission. That brought me to working on its consumer-facing brand, sorted.org.nz, which many people will have heard of. And essentially there, it's about really helping people to lift their financial capability. I'm sure you guys have seen the same trends that I've been seeing over the past decades, which is basically that our financial world is becoming more and more complex, and people are being left more to their own devices to navigate the whole thing. And so the need for advisors like yourselves, and then for services like ours, which are put out by the Retirement Commission in this case, to the country really help.
Yeah, great. So for listeners who might not be familiar, can you tell us a little bit about what the role of the Retirement Commission is, and how does it help? How does it designed to help sort of everyday Kiwis?
Yeah, so the Retirement Commission, it's important to know, well, New Zealand has a retirement commissioner, which is Jane Wrightson. At the moment, we're very lucky to have her, but behind her is an entire team of really talented people, and they work basically in three areas. The lion's share of what they do happens to be financial capability, and so the work, for example, on Sorted in schools, we have a presence in Sorted in the community, and then Sorted in workplace programs as well. And all those efforts, that whole ecosystem is really made to lift our financial capability to get us to the best possible position by the time we hit retirement. So Jane has a lot of people come up to her who are retired and say, thank you for everything you're doing for retirees. But actually, a lot of what her team does is for future retirees and getting us all to the best possible position. We also have a role in retirement income policy. So all the settings around, for example, KiwiSaver or NZ Super, the whole system. We're an autonomous crown entity, and so we're part of government, but we're at arm's length, and so we give advice to government that's evidence-led. We have a research arm, and basically trying to make changes to the system that make sense for all New Zealanders and are at the system level. And so we want the system to be more sustainable, more trusted, more fair. And really, so every time you tweak a system like that, you really have to make sure how it affects all sorts of people, not just certain types of retirees. And then we also have a smaller role with retirement villages and overseeing them as well. So those are the three sort of areas that we work in. But again, we've got this consumer-facing brand where we can really put out messages to the public in order so that they can make more informed decisions about their finances.
And Tom, I think many people have heard of Sorted but may not realise it is linked to the Retirement Commission. What is Sorted designed to do and how should people use it?
Yeah, so we're really lucky, as I say, to have a consumer-facing brand. Lots of people don't even know that it's put out by the New Zealand government. But the great thing about Sorted is it's a very trusted brand. It's used by about 850,000 people each year. So it's quite extensive in the amount of people who use it. And it doesn't matter really that they don't know that it's put out by the government, but our kind of superpower, you could say, is the fact that we don't have to sell anything. We're not there trying to push a product. We're not there trying to make a buck in order to sustain ourselves. We're really there as a service for everyone in order to lift their financial capability across the board. And so we put out, for example, tools, guides, and blogs that are really there to inform people, but also, to what we're aiming to do is really promote people's financial growth, but also promote their resilience. And that's in pretty much, that trickles through everything we do on the website. That's what Sorted is about. Fundamentally, we believe that people can tweak their finances and get really meaningful results, especially over the long term.
Tom, when it comes to KiwiSaver, what are the key things that people should focus on when choosing and managing their fund?
Yeah, so choosing a KiwiSaver fund, all of us essentially need to make an active choice of what fund we're in. Now, we get defaulted into certain funds by the government when you're opted in automatically, and those might be fine, but you need to make an active choice of whether to stay in it or not. And at Sorted, we promote a methodology sort of it's kind of 4 different criteria on how to pick a KiwiSaver fund. And we've got a whole guide on this. We've got a tool called the KiwiSaver Fund Finder that's based on these principles. But essentially, the first criteria, and I'm sure you guys will agree, is going to be risk level. Investing in KiwiSaver, it's really you're putting your money at risk in order to get returns back. How much risk is appropriate? And it'll depend on different things. And there are 5 different types of funds, and getting what type of fund is right for each person is the essential first step. And so we've got a lot of support on Sorted in order to help people either get into a growth fund, aggressive, conservative, whichever, depending on a few different criteria of where they're at, how soon they might need to use the money, their comfort level with ups and downs, where they're at with their investing. So type of fund or risk level, that's the first criteria. The second one is really going to be about the fees. And it's going to be about whether those fees are reasonable and whether you're getting value for money. And a lot of people don't realize that when we pay a fund manager, for example, the fee levels we don't get charged for them. We don't get an invoice. We don't get a bill or anything like that. They're represented in tiny little percentage. You guys count in bips, right? In basis points, hundredths of a percentage point. So it's easier for people to switch off and say, it's not going to be. So we built the KiwiSaver Fund Finder to estimate how much you would pay in fees in a given fund. over your complete KiwiSaver experience to age 65, and we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes over $100,000 in fees for the average KiwiSaver. So, like, this is big money. You have to keep an eye on fees. So that's first criteria is risk level. Second criteria is reasonable fees. Third one are the services and communications that your provider is going to give you that come with that fund. And so every 6 months, we go out to KiwiSaver providers to survey them about the quantity of services that they offer. And we have a star system so that people can see pretty quickly about what they get from their provider and how much they might be paying. And so there's that value proposition, that cost benefit analysis that people can do on the fly. Finally, performance. But we really, you guys will probably tell your clients this all the time, do not pick a fund on past performance, because we don't really know how it's going to do in the future. No indicator, right? But for us, we say you can look at past performance, look as long as possible. And then what you're looking for is try to stay away from the funds that have performed below average, because that could be a sign of less than great management, right? And you're basically, you can have a look there, but don't pick a fund based on past performance. I'm sure your clients and our audience definitely has other criteria as well, but those are the top four. So risk level, fee level, service and communications, and then have a quick look at past performance. Others, they really take a look at, the ethics and what companies are in the portfolio. That all can come afterwards. But those are the big things to take into account when you're picking a KiwiSaver fund. And we've got a lot of support on Sorted to help people do that.
Great, thanks, Tom. KiwiSaver balances are likely to grow quite significantly over the next 10 to 20 years. What challenges do you see emerging as a result of that growth?
Yeah, and that's a good thing, right? This is a good news story that if you look ahead, the future is brighter, and we look forward to the growth that'll happen through KiwiSaver. And as those balances grow, the other good thing that's going to happen is people are going to become more engaged, because the research is showing us that when balances become about the size of a small car or something like that, then people really switch on. They're like, oh, I better pay attention here. And that's a really good thing. But too much attention is not that great, right? So when people are looking at their balances, on their phones or something like that, the more apt they are to see those ups and downs that are par for the course when you're investing. And there is a chance that, they might try to jump ship or jump off the roller coaster midway through, which of course is a very dangerous thing to do. The other thing we're keeping an eye on, KiwiSaver essentially, because it is a workplace-based, employee-based scheme, is really going to amplify the differences in income. And so we're looking at inequalities that can result from this system. Another thing to mention is that, KiwiSaver was meant to supplement NZ Super, which lays a foundation for retirees. Little by little, we're starting to talk about more it taking a role more like replacing NZ Super. And if we wanted to do that, then it wasn't really designed for that. And so we really need to have a good look on whether it's going to do that, and do that for all KiwiSaver members. Lots of things to consider.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So there's naturally a lot of focus on how to build wealth, but perhaps less on how to use it when you come to retirement. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions about how people should go about thinking about how to draw down or spend their funds in retirement?
Yeah, over the past year, we've actually done a lot of work in this space, because we can see it in the future, just like we're looking at, those future balances. In the future, KiwiSaver is actually going to become a vehicle for people to keep their money invested, but also draw down gradually. And so it's really going to become a drawdown product in the way that people are going to manage their income above NZ Super in the future. And the actuaries, some very, very smart individuals who run scenarios and who are math wizards and who run these spreadsheet models, have basically come up with 4 rules of thumb for drawing down your savings, for spending it in a certain way. And what we've done is we built a tool called the Retirement Navigator, where you can plug in your figures, and see what kind of income over each year in your retirement that you can get from your lump sum that's saved. And basically you can manage your spending over time in order to make it last for as long as you want. Lots of people, for example, want to front load their retirement when they're more active, and others really want to make it last and even have a legacy afterwards. So just depending on their preferences, we take those preferences in, and then we feed back to them the approach that best fits their situation, and show them some real numbers of what it could look like over time, depending on how markets do, depending on how long a retirement span they have, and depending on what type of fund they're in. So lots to consider, but we have done a lot of work in this area. If people are interested, come have a look at the Retirement Navigator and some of the guides that surround it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tom. Sounds like a great tool. You work across both DIY investors and those obtaining professional advice. How do you see the two approaches coming together?
It's really important to know that we've always sorted the website with its tools and information as an on-ramp to a really good conversation with an advisor. It's not meant to replace it. It's really meant to educate a KiwiSaver member, an investor, and so that they can have a better conversation, a better interaction. And the feedback I get, I don't know how you guys feel, but the feedback I get from advisors generally is that clients really like our tools. They really like the materials that we have, because then you end up, talking to a client who has started their journey, their financial capability journey, has lifted their knowledge, their experience, and they're in a better place to really get more out of what you guys offer in the advice space.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. So beyond KiwiSaver, what other areas is the Retirement Commission currently focused on?
So for us, KiwiSaver can't really, and improving the KiwiSaver system can't really be considered in itself without how it fits in the overall retirement income system, and that includes NZ Super. And so when you'll hear a lot, and you hear a lot in the media or in the conversation this year and politically of changes to KiwiSaver, and even we're having it now with the lifts in contribution rates going to 3.5%, for example, now in April, and then up to 4% in April 2028. What we're focused on is, when you make changes like that, what effect does it have on the different populations? Because all of us, I'm sure you've seen it, is that all of us don't have the same retirement. All of us, we have very different situations on the way we live, where we live, how we live. And so therefore, we are really pushing for a cross-party accord and a long-term agreement in terms of what this retirement system will be, so that we can trust that it's going to be there, that it's sustainable for the long term, and that it's fair in the way that it affects different people when you make changes to it. So this is really one of our biggest focus.
Tom, from all the work you've done around personal finance, what tends to trip people up the most?
Yeah, the things I've found, and there will be, like, we could look at different surveys and evidence and things like that, but I found, the parts of human nature that really trips us up is the way our brain works with money. And part of that is understanding our spending in aggregate. Like, for example, if we talked about, how much we spent on coffee maybe in the last day or so, we would be pretty good. You can remember the last one, maybe the one before that or something like that. But if we do a quick, how much did you spend on coffee in the past 3 months? It'd be really tough. You could go back into transactions, things like, when you start to, our brains don't work very well in aggregate. So we continually get surprised by things like credit card bills or something like that. We're like, oh, did I do that? Did I do that? Because it all comes one after the other, one after the other. We might think of that last time, but we're not thinking about what's going on at home. And the other thing that trips us up is just the difficulty we have with long-term thinking. And the research is telling us, for example, that if we're saving for the future, and say it's future me or future you, that person, actually our brains treat that person like a stranger. like we don't know that person. If you think about yourself 20 years from now and you're like saving for that person or your future family, those feel like strangers. And why would you do that? And so you have all these apps and things that are trying to help you get to know the future you, but it's a difficult thing. And so thankfully, we have something like KiwiSaver and the systems we have which overcome that, which are basically set up a regular contribution into it and not thinking each time you contribute that this is for my future self, no, it's just set and forget behind the scenes. And those are the best systems. So we're really, we see the benefits of design in overcoming those things that trip us up.
If someone listening is in their 40s, 50s or 60s and they want to improve their outlook for retirement, what are the key steps they should take?
So as we're building tools on Sorted, one of the things that we've tried to emphasize is what the levers are that you can pull in order to get a different outcome. And there are important levers that you can. And I'm sure you share this with your clients who are preparing for retirement or who are in retirement. You can actually get radically different results by the choices you make in there. And I'm thinking of things like we already talked about picking the right fund for you. If you change fund type, that can be over $100,000 of difference just by making choices like that. But also contribution rates, for example. And then if you want to really dive into what you're holding in a fund you have, like a KiwiSaver fund, we've got our Smart Investor platform, which is a comparison engine that really features all of the information that we have about any KiwiSaver fund, any managed fund in New Zealand that is disclosed by fund managers by law. So we have all the information there. And if you really want to unpack those are really some things that you can pull those levers and get radically different results, especially over the long term, for younger people today. But as to your question, even those who are, a decade or less away, they can really get different results by pulling those levers.
Thanks, Tom. And finally, on a more personal note, how are you thinking and feeling about your own journey into retirement?
Yeah, I'm happy with the way it's gone. I mean, staying in the market. They always say that thing about don't try to time the market, jump in and jump out, but just it's the time in the market. And at this stage, I'm really happy to have had that time in the market. KiwiSaver wasn't always around for my entire career, but happily in this latest period, been able to take advantage of that. So I'm very grateful for that. There's always a funny thing when you start to compare with others. All of us need to sort of run our own race in this. And so I'm grateful for the progress that we made. Try not to compare too much and try to get into the best possible position by the time when I'm ready to retire. So grateful, but also working towards the future and trying to make sure optimizing what we can do in the present day so that we get a lot more out in the future.
Awesome. So Tom, thanks very much for joining us today. Thanks you for sharing your personal insights with us as well as your work with the Retirement Commission. Thanks very much for joining us on the Retire Well podcast.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Go well, guys. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, that was a really interesting conversation with Tom. I think one of the things that stood out for me was that how simple things done consistently over time can really add up.
Yes, it's about paying attention to things like fund manager selection and fees and not overreacting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the hardest things. Like as Tom says, it's, in terms of reacting as markets move up and down can be, the temptation to do it can be pretty tempting.
Yeah, and often it's actually quite costly.
Yeah, very costly.
Yeah. I also like Tom's point around behaviour in that we aren't great long-term thinkers.
Yeah, he introduced this idea of a future us and how this sort of future us will benefit from the decisions we make today.
And hopefully benefit in a good way. And I think that's where tools like Sorted can come in. They're not necessarily there to replace advice, but they're a great foundation and they can kickstart our learning.
Yeah, and I guess they can lead to better conversations, whether that be with your advisor or around the kitchen table at home.
Yes, yeah. Well, that about wraps up episode 5 of Retire Well. Thanks for tuning in, and a big thanks to Tom for joining us on the show.
And if you found the topics helpful, please consider giving the show a like, subscribing. You can also drop us a comment if there's any area of personal finance or living your best life in retirement that you'd like to know more about.
See you next time.
Thank you.